40 million. And the concern that I have about Nigeria oftentimes is the fact that youth unemployment is pretty much under the radar. In an environment where the representatives of government say 40 million youth are not employed and 23 million youth are not employable, I find that there really hasn't been a top-level conversation around what we can really do, maybe driven by private sector and public civic society, to create a real shift. And I'll give an example. Tiwai Danjuma Foundation fund us. And for every quarter that we run our training programs, say for 70 people, about 7,500 apply. As a HR manager, previous HR manager, I know that there's just a lot of investment that needs to be made in our youth. Let me represent a lot of things that Mr. Adeyinka said. I don't want to take too much time. So some of those things are still very big companies. Let me speak for the small NGOs in this room who don't have the luxury of funding to engage in the kind of exercise or kind of processes that will get people. I don't want to ramble, but the truth about the matter is there's an issue around youth employability. It's not really been given the attention that it needs to. And what would some of your organizations, and Tiwai Danjuma is already doing that, how would you advise us to maybe capture the message in a way that allows us to have some shift or some affirmative action around I'm sure all of us in this room know someone who's not employed, not necessarily because they're not certified or certificated, but because the basic tools that they need to transition from school to work is very missing in our society. I hope my question or comment is clear.
Very important, yes, thank you. The two hands I saw there, and then I'll take Ini last.
My name is Francisca Obinatu. My question is to Mr. Adeyinka. I was quite taken in with your presentation on cause marketing. But please correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding was that you work with organizations who have a certain span, and after that you move to another organization, or perhaps to you. Now my question is this: in what way can cause marketing and in the cause that the sponsors may choose to pursue? So it isn't just about helping one woman to sight back and then that closes that. Or it's not about providing clean water in a community in South Africa, for instance, and that closes that. How is it sustainable through a longer period of time?
Good afternoon. My name is Iriti Jabbar. My question is about the partnership and collaboration you mentioned in philanthropy. Do you usually have some sort of memorandum of understanding that you establish? And how are you able, after that project or that initiative has ended, how are you able to sustain, and which one of the partners will take the glory for that initiative? What happens afterwards for sustainability purposes? Thank you.
Amy, yes.
Thank you. I just want to go back to what Okumbo was talking about when she asked the question about the buzzwords that are coming out. And I think the idea behind putting this particular session was to really underscore everything that we've talked about today. And of course, the buzzwords. Because out there, when you say CSR, people say it's philanthropy. When you say CSR, people say it's giving back. When you say CSR, people say we're already doing it, and when we sponsor 4 golfers to Sweden, we're doing CSR. And I think the idea was really to, contextualize each and every one of them and be able to say there are different things, but there are always linkages, and understanding the linkage, where it starts and where it stops, it's very critical. So it's been able to say Tony Lumuli Foundation does impact investing. Tiwai Danjuma Foundation is a philanthropy grant-making organization, indigenous grant-making organization, and being able to situate them within the areas where they are. In terms of the alliances as well, I think Thelma has said it. It is more of, will an MTN want to collaborate with an Owandu? without feeling that, as you said, whose logo will be bigger, who will color the place, the hall that we're going to use if ever we get to do an event. And so it still boils down to, for me, the impact of everything that we do on the society and the communities within which we do the business. So I just wanted to bring that out, why, of course, this particular session came in and how we intend to relate it to the overall theme that we're working with. Thank you.
Thank you for that point. Let me give the panelists a chance to close. I'll start with Dr. Adewale, since you were last, and then Tunji, and then end with Wiba.
Thank you. I mean, the response has been so wonderful. About forming that partnership, I think it can be higher now. The moment we all agree that we have the same objective, just like when you want to enter a kind of relationship with any organization. So you can start with, say, an MOU and things like that. And we are not even talking of, you know, small or not too recognized organization this time around. So, I mean, there should be a kind of, I'm aware of that. Yesterday night, I don't know, I saw it right, in collaboration with organization, I think with Tony Blair in the US, in UK. So I mean, so something like that. At least publicly you sign a kind of an MOU. I watch it on the TV. So it's a very good example. We can do that. We can replicate that or take it down, you know, to our own at least at that level. So it is possible. And about the issue of who takes the glory, I think that's part of the typical African kind of mentality. I don't know. If 10 or 20 people agree that, look, we want to ensure that, look, people in Morocco have better water. Oh, it does not really matter who carried the whole glory and put it on his forehead. 10 of us contributed, and that's all. And I think that we need to change our thinking in that direction. So, yes, this concept of giving philanthropy and CSR, that is pure, I mean, the definition, although it's very important, we need to know that. Given generally, at the fundamental level, I belong to the old era. That's when you just issue a check, that check is given for a particular cause. That's I mean, it's a great. Now, but at a point, it can go up to what I think I appreciate. When Dr. Owa said catalytic philanthropy, which is very wonderful. But CSR is an example of catalytic philanthropy because you go back to your drawing board, at your board level, you think of something you want to impact, and it is incorporated. You know, not just waking up, and because a member of board of director of my organization is from Ikariakuku down in Ondo State, and because they need a school, let me now donate something. No, it must be consciously planned and conscientiously followed, at least to impact a particular set of people. I think that's just my explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. I will try not to preach about this and not to sound, to go on a moral high ground. But when we're talking about cost marketing, speaking directly to Dayton, is that there must be an understanding that everyone around the table is there for a different reason. And we must understand why we're all sitting around the table. In some cases, the corporate organization is sitting around the table, not necessarily because they want to invest in a particular cause for 20 years. They're sitting around the table because they have a certain objective they want to meet in 6 months or 1 year or 2 years. And therefore, the kind of solution that you then give to them is a solution that must meet their objective at that point in time. Now, sometimes some of the proposals we bring to the table cannot meet those objectives. And we must be clear enough to understand that. So, I want to sell my product. I want to increase sales by 30%. There is a certain cost or a certain need that people are very, very, that they buy into around a certain area. So the corporate organization says, I can use this cost, right, to sell my product or to meet this objective. as the one sitting on the other side, your objective is to make sure the corporate buys your pitch, and then you meet your objectives. They meet their own objectives at the end of the day. So sometimes you don't go to a corporate and the corporate is willing to do this long-term investment in preventing blindness or things like that. Sometimes they have a specific objective, and that objective may be short-term, and you then try and see if what you have can actually meet that objective. If you look at Samsung, for instance, I know that Samsung runs one very good program with the organization. I also know there's a Samsung program for developers, software developers. And for the developer community, wow, this is beautiful. You're giving us access to develop software and then put it on an international platform globally like Samsung. But you know what? Samsung needs software to sell. So Samsung pays, Samsung gets this community together, and Samsung invests in the development of software. Samsung achieves its objective by getting local Nigerian, African software to put on their platform. Now, on the other side, the organization that is managing that on the NGO side, you meet your objectives. So it's about understanding what the objective is and understanding how to pitch where you're going to. So the kind of terms we've used, whether it's cost marketing, is not like when you go in to make a pitch, you say, I've come to make a cost marketing pitch. Because, half the people you're talking to don't think in that context, but your proposal is very clear. It shows me this is the benefit I can get, and it is instant. Of course, 70% of the benefits that we sometimes pitch are not short-term, and therefore we must recognize that that is the case.
So let me answer the question. I think it was on youth employment. Basically, everything about what we're doing is actually is related to that, because our focus is if you're building the African private sector and driving growth from within, that's about creating jobs. So sort of on the higher level, everything we do around our advocacy, most of our programs are about building the African private sector so that there will be more jobs for the youth as they come through the system. Even when we make our impact investments, for example, how many jobs, and not just sort of seasonal, 1 month part-time jobs, but how many real full-time jobs with benefits will be created through this, and directly and indirectly and so on. And that's one of the metrics that we look at when we're making an investment, because that's absolutely important. If you don't solve that problem, almost everything else we're doing doesn't matter. And one of the things that we also, through what we're trying to do, is we also need to challenge, many of the investors in the private sector players in Africa, that they need to move beyond what is often rent-seeking, where it's basically just about importing stuff and exporting raw materials from Africa. And basically by doing that, you're losing the opportunity to create jobs on every side. And so we need to push our own private sector to say, do more than that. Don't just import everything because it's easier. Produce it here and get to the point where you can actually do it competitively. And we will actually help with the advocacy side, et cetera, to make the country more competitive so that it works better for you. But then also, if you're exporting stuff, add value here. Every little bit of value you add here in Africa creates more jobs for Africans. And that way, again, that's the way you really build the economy and really have impact. And then the dollars that you invest go a lot further. Okay, you know what? It may mean that your immediate returns are a little less, but the overall impact that you will have on your continent or your country will be so much more. And so that's also the challenge that we're throwing out there. In terms of partnerships, there's too much to do. There's too much to be done. And anybody who's sort of overly focused on the size of their logo and who's going to get the glory, maybe they just need to go and do some small little thing on their own. In the end, we need to be judged on what impact we have. And the size and beauty of our logo doesn't really matter. And until we move the needle to that point where we say what matters is impact, and you got to demonstrate impact. It's not about big splashes. It's not about how much you're in the media. It's about what you really are doing to change this continent. That's what matters. And whoever wants to be part of